Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I chat with really cool people about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate both personal and professional change. And today's topic is Stop the Struggle so that you can get to it. And this conversation is worth your while if you have an internal knowing that your life has a bigger potential than the one you've been living to. And if you just love to stop that struggle so that you can give your gifts to the world. And we're going to start with some intros. I'm Linda Bucher. I'm a heart centered master coach, a mindset mentor, a speaker, and an author. And this is my jam. So if you're excited about making a positive impact on the world and you feel that bigness inside of you that you know you're meant to share and you want to do more and be more and have more joy, more fun, more balance, and more impact, then connect with me because that is my jam. And my gift is lighting the way for those who are making an impact in the world. And today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Neeki Bey. Neeki is one of my most favorite people, and I'm so excited to have him here today. So, hi, Neeki, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Hey, Linda. It's good to be with you today.
Thank you so much for being here. So awesome. Neeki, can you just tell the audience a little bit about, what you do, who you serve?
Yeah, I'm a musician by training, and the world has kind of brought me into the world of production and creative direction. So a lot of my time today is doing that kind of work.
Yes, it's all beautiful work, very beautiful work. So great. Okay, so today we're talking about like um, stopping the struggle, right? So and we're talking to people who have this feeling, and I remember when I had this feeling that there's something more for me and probably something more I'm supposed to be doing. And so I knew that inside, but what happens with any hero's journey is we don't heed the call at first.
Right.
That was my experience. So can you tell us a little bit about, when you knew that life had a bigger potential for you than maybe what you were taught or raised to believe or anything in your history?
Yeah, I'm one of those like really curious people in the world. So from the time that I was a kid, I remember we would go on trips as and all my sisters would fall asleep in the car, and I'm the the guy that would stay up at night and try to see all the sights because I wanted to just see it all and I wanted to know it all and say, oh, we're driving through Louisiana now. What's in Louisiana? We're driving through Mississippi. So I've always kind of had this underlying desire to see and to grow and to be in the world. And I think as an adult, I think it really kind of came about 6 or 7 years ago, where I realized I'd finished my bachelor's degree, I'd finished a master's degree, had a pretty good life, and yet I just knew that there was more. And I tried a couple of things on my own, and it actually ended up bringing me to coaching, and so. There was just a knowing. There's just this thing inside that says, "Yeah, this is great, but there's something even greater."
Yeah, I think we have that inkling for a long time in our lives, but we kind of squash it because, we do spend our lives trying to do the right things the way, that has been exemplified for us from, parents, from peers, from society. So, like, I know when I was going to get my master's degree in business, it was because this is one of the ways it's going to help you climb that corporate ladder.
Right.
But I never had this giant desire personally to climb the corporate ladder. I just thought that was what you're supposed to do. You get a job and then you get a raise and then you get promoted and you get a raise and then you get promoted and like that's what I thought it was until my kind of awakening moment was when I realized how gapingly unfulfilled I felt. So I was experiencing this like um just internal conflict where I felt there was a part of me that just was ready to wake up. And
Hmm.
I had probably been ignoring that part of me for a very long time. So she decided she was going to punch her way out. So she was like, okay, you're not listening. So I'm going to punch my way out. So, and I remember this feeling like, and I'm a real visual person. So I remember like feeling like I was standing on a sidewalk and there was this brick building that was like, I don't even know how high, like 12 stories high. And it was right there. It was just all brick. And I couldn't see what I wanted to see because this brick was right in the way. And it's on the right side. I don't know why. I'm just telling you that's where the brick was. And I knew if I could get down to the corner, I could look around and my answer would be there. But the corner it wasn't so far that I couldn't see it. I knew it was there. I could see it, but I just like, how do I get to that corner? How do I find what that thing is? Because I didn't know it was a bigness. Like I would say, I'm the Go Big coach, right? I'm like, oh, you have a bigness inside of you. I didn't know that. I wasn't that evolved. I was like, I just knew there was something more, and I didn't, and I than where I was. I knew I wasn't supposed to be standing on that sidewalk next to that brick wall. That was supposed to be around the corner. Like that, I could feel. So that was
Yeah.
my little experience. So yeah, so we have this this bigness. I always say that everyone has gifts to give to the world, but at the time I didn't know what the gifts were. I mean, I was really good at spreadsheets, like really good at spreadsheets. Like, oh my gosh, could I make you a spreadsheet? Could I do a financial plan for you, financial analysis for a corporation? I was doing some sales. I was in project management. I was a computer programmer. Like I had skills, but none of those skills were, I wasn't using them in a way that was fulfilling to me. So it
Yeah.
was like a puzzle for a while. Like, did you have a puzzle at all like that?
I think I was really fortunate. Some of the stories that I hear people, when you're growing up, and if your parents tell you the only way that success looks like is if you're, a doctor or a business person, this or that. I was really fortunate that very early on I got support in being an artist, and it just so happened that I got a scholarship to go to school, and on and on. So I didn't have that kind of burden or hurdle to overcome. Uh, but there was obviously, for all of us, there's these childhood dramas and concepts and ideas that are passed to us a lot of times for our good, that I think we get the opportunity, if we choose, to work through later in life, and then basically shed some of those. I think that's the core of it, is that some of the stuff that was for our good at a certain point in life doesn't mean that it's going to be for our good later in life. And so when one comes to that awareness and is able to separate from that, I think it's a good thing. So that's basically what happened to me. Is like, I think my parents in particular had a certain way of living, and my desire was beyond that. So that isn't something that's easy to just walk through. There's a little bit of work, kind of a little bit of unpacking to do to get to that other side of that. When the model that you've been given is a beautiful model, but you know that there's more. And so that was the thing for me.
Yeah, the model for me was that whole climb the corporate ladder thing.
Yeah.
I watched my dad, when my parents got married. My dad had a associate's degree, and he was working so many hours just to try to keep some food on the table.
Hmm.
And he knew he wanted more. But that wasn't the example that I took away. Like, that wasn't the message I took away, was that he was in the same place. He was like, there's more for me than, he grew up, on the West Side, and where he was the only one in his whole neighborhood that ever even went to college for his associate's degree, and it was like he was breaking out, but I didn't see that. All I saw was the nicer house, the nicer car. And so and trying to, it was really more ego and proving things. That's what I took away. I missed the whole message that
Yeah.
he saw something more and he wanted to break out. And I also missed the message of my mom, who also, like you, had a full scholarship to college for music. She's a master's degree in music, and she's a music teacher, piano teacher, all my life. And she was quiet. She loved what she did every day. She wasn't getting rich on it, but she loved it. And so, how my child's perception, I didn't see the reality of what they were really showing me. I thought I saw something that wasn't wrong. My perception wasn't correct. I didn't see my dad breaking out and having the same thing within him that I have within me. And I didn't see my mom doing what matters and what lights her up, which I do now, right? So it took me until I was like 45 to learn this lesson, to see what they were really showing me versus what I thought they were showing me. So I found that to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the most significant journeys that I've taken in life is the journey of understanding my parents as human beings versus parents, that shift. Because in that way, then you're able to kind of to see them holistically, to see them for the things that they achieve, like in your father's situation, how he did something that his peers and people around him weren't doing. and yet he was able to get to a point, and for you that wasn't enough. Like there's something more, and he knew, it sounds like, in his spirit, but it's difficult. And so I've had that. My dad is from a very rural part of Alabama, and he was one of the few to get out, go to technical school, get an associate's degree, this kind of thing. My mom was one in nine, the only to go, to college, the only one to get a master's degree. And so, and yet you see that and you celebrate that and recognize that, and to see the struggles that they went through to get that. And and yet there's something more for me, and
Right.
so to appreciate the strides that they made in life, and then to say, yeah, I recognize that and love that, and let's keep going, let's take it to the next level,
Mm.
has really been the calling. And I think the part of it is, you say, okay, well, this is all great, and but there's this thing in your spirit that's like, for me, there's this thing in your spirit. It's just a knowing. It's just like keep calling, that I find it hard to put to sleep. I can't just, and when I have conversations with people, they know it too. Like a lot of people I know, they know it. They might not be able to put their finger on what it is, but they know it. And so, like, what I try to do in the world as a producer and musician and whoever I'm working with, is to try to support that thing, because I think from that place, beauty and light and love and all the wonderful human experiences come. And when they're not there, then the light kind of is dimmed, and the world is not as great of a place as it could be. So it's a significant and worthwhile journey.
It is. And for people like me and you who have found our fire and we let that burn, right? We have it. And people, that's what we're saying, that's what people see in us, is this fire we have within. And so it makes us, um, because maybe it wasn't, that fire was always burning there, but like I said, I was ignoring it for a while. I don't know about you. But then once I became aware that it was there and got to became to understand it, and doing all those things like what you're saying is seeing your parents different, that's huge. As you know, I take all my clients through seeing their parents as humans, who have the same fears and insecurities like we do. And like, really, it's not about you. It's about them. um, but then when we've finally nurtured the fire within us, and we recognize that it's been given to us so that we can share that to help other people, nurture their own flame, fire within them, then that's probably why you're so good at what you do, is because you're like, I feel it, man. I feel it and I see it in you. So come on, let's get it out.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
I am, the same exact way. I feel it and I see it in you. So yeah, let's get it going.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's 100% my orientation in the world. So it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. And something that's it's really about, if you have someone in your life that can help you, um, that gives you helps you give yourself permission, maybe by giving you permission to let yourself focus on that. Like you had your parents, which really helped you focus on the arts, right? And they saw that in you, and they said, let's let's do that. Now I'm a musician as well, and but my mindset when I was going to college was, with music, it's who you know, or you have to practice 8 hours a day. I don't know anybody and I'm not practicing 8 hours a day. I better go
Right.
to college for business, right? And I left that whole creative side of me completely behind. And it went dormant. It never went away, but boy, was that dormant for a long time, until I was writing a blog. This was so funny. Um, Early on, I worked for a natural gas company, and so every day people would call me to ask me, like, if they could buy some pipeline space to move between point A and point B, right? And so I would have to tell everybody what's happening every single day. I would talk to the operations guy. I have to all these phone calls. So I said, I'm gonna put it out on the internet. It was a blog. I didn't know it was a blog. I'm like, every day I'm going to post the status, right, of what's happening, and then the customers can go read that.
Right.
So, it's such a silly thing. There's a when a pipelines corrode. So, you don't want gas leaking all over the place. So they always have to assess the integrity of the pipeline. So once a year, they close down a segment and they launch this thing. It's called a pig because when it goes through the pipeline really fast, it's powered by pressure of natural gas. It squeals. So it's called a pig. And they launch it and it takes computer data for the thickness of the walls and the integrity or whatever. And then once we know it's positive and all it's good, we can open the pipeline back up. So that's what we had to do. So um, it impacted the sales. I couldn't move any gas down that pipeline, that segment that day because we were pigging, right? Which everyone in the industry knows what that is. And now so does everyone who's listening. Pigging, oh, I know what that is, right? So, I call the operations guy the next day. I'm like, how'd the pigging go? Is the line open? He's like, no, the line's not open. We're having trouble getting the information off the computer, off the pig. It's just we're having trouble with the data, but we're working on it. I'm like, okay. So my blog title that day was "The Pig Takes the Fifth," right? So the creativity started squeaking out, little by little,
Yeah.
and then and then I wrote the serious part, and I had to run it by my boss because I was like, he's not going to let me do this, and he was like, yeah, that's kind of funny. And then the
Yeah.
next day, that I called the operations guy and he's like, yeah, the pipeline's back in service. We actually were able to get the data off. So then my headline was "The Pig Squeals," right? So it was squeaking out a little bit, but it was mostly dormant and mostly stifled until I couldn't ignore anymore
Yeah.
that there was something more for me. So a lot of times in our lives there's a catalyst, where you just can't, and for me, I couldn't get up in the morning anymore and get to my office by 8 in my corporate job. I could get there by like 9:15, but that essential part of me, that essential stuff was like, no, don't make me go. It's the wrong life. It's not the right way. And it was really that part, those gifts, those big things, that fire inside of me saying, you know what? It's time for me to, we're going here. We like to think we're in charge, but that self
Right.
sabotage that happens when we oversleep, we forget to go do something over and over again, it's because it's the wrong direction for us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Paying attention to the signs. And I think, probably culturally people think, oh, this awakening or this awareness often moves towards the creative. I've actually, known people where it moves the opposite direction. So they're living in a creative space. And then it's like, yeah, I want something that maybe more structured in a way that suits them better, or,
Mm-hmm.
fill in the blank. And so it's been aware kind of holistically. You might be over here and it's over here. You might be over there and it's over there. But yeah, the idea is like coming to awakening and coming to awareness. And I think that sometimes is the challenge. I mean, we get these little inklings or these knowings, or we have this thing that's in our gut that's telling us we need to do something. But a lot of times it seems the challenge is, what do you do with that? Like
Mm-hmm.
how do you take that thing and then make something of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so for you, it seemed like there was a lot of life kind of happening and reflection on your parents and that kind of stuff that brought you into that awareness, right?
Oh, yes. And a bunch of physical um, symptoms
Mm,
that were, giant, right? Like
yeah,
my body, I mean, that's how we hear that essential self is through our body. And we know it because when we're going in the wrong direction, we get whatever, butterflies in our stomach, tension headaches, shoulder pain. Like your body is going to totally show you, like echo, this is wrong for you, right? But your
yeah,
body also does the opposite when something's true and right for you. So that's why I remember I'd be like working. I have like this eye twitch for like 2 months, Then I go on vacation by day two, no more eye twitch, right?
gone.
That's a physical, right? That's physical. And it was too much. It was, I needed that space. And when I gave myself that space, my body responded by saying, see, I'm echoing, this is correct. This is the way, this is what's right for you right now is you need some space, you need some relaxation. And and eventually I think what the physical symptoms I was having when I ended up making this change and giving into this potential that was within me were really bad. Like I couldn't sleep for more than about 15 minutes at a time. I'd wake up in pain. Like that's a lot of back and neck pain. My gallbladder was working at about 26% capacity and I had 22 extra pounds on me. And as soon as I quit the corporate job, the pounds melted off, and I was eating ice cream and Oreos, let me tell you, because I cannot walk past the kitchen without grabbing two Oreos. So I got to not go into the kitchen too many times a day, right? So, um, but the 22 pounds melted off. My gallbladder started working normally, miraculously. They wanted to take it out, you know. Back and neck pain got about 85% better, I would say. And it's all I did was stop going in the wrong direction. That's it. It's like the game of getting warmer and getting colder. And your
Yeah.
body is the feedback that's saying getting warmer, getting colder, you know? I know you have a very interesting getting warmer experience that you have when something is right for you. Like some people say that, oh,
Yeah.
I get chills or whatever, but you've got something interesting, don't you?
Yeah, I guess the language that I call it is the wave, and when it's right or when it touches me, or it's just there's this sensation that kind of pulsates through my entire body. It's actually embodied in my logo for my production and music business. Is I met this designer and I was like, hey, do this logo for me. I told him a little about me, and I'll be if he didn't like literally encapsulate the actual feeling in a design. It was just like beautiful. So
Uh,
yeah, that's my sense. Is
yeah.
through
And
the
so
wave.
then once you know what it is, you just trust it. You're like, oh, there it is again. It's like a reinforcement. I am in the right place, talking to the right person, going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it doesn't come to me all the time, but yeah, I think there's a level of kind of like patience and stillness and there's we I was reading this book that says we have 4,000 like on average we have like 4,000 weeks, and so you look at that and like wow, life is like really really short, when we think about it that way. But like the path towards this awakening or towards becoming is it feels like a long time. So what we end up doing is filling our lives with a bunch of stuff. I need to make a bunch of money here. I need to go do this thing here. I gotta, let's do this maintenance project over here. It's like, whatever. You just cramming your life with stuff. And I think a lot of this, at least for me, somebody's recommending this book, Deep Work, and it's just like, for me, I get it through turning off the cell phone, turning off the socials, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't have to do it. I don't have to be a saint at it, but like
Right.
periods of time where I'm able to connect with that internal knowing, that deeper place. That's the thing that helps me to reconnect with my North Star. And then it also happens on walks. Whenever I go on a walk, things that just seem to come. And I guess I encourage people to be present to those situations that are really a benefit for them, because I think it's different for different people. Some people have awakenings in shower, like when they're taking showers or bathing, and some people, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But being present to those spaces that are serving you, and then trusting that, and then I think that's the real faith journey, is like saying, okay, God has put me, the Creator has put this stuff in me, and like let me listen to it, not just walk away from it, ignore it.
Right. Yeah, you make a really good point that yes, we have these gifts inside of us, but if you don't give yourself the space to listen, then they don't come. My journey was it took me 9 years to from the time I first heard it till I
Yeah.
actually gave myself the time and space to listen and see what it was because I was like, "Shh, I'm busy. Shh, I'm busy. Shh, I'm busy." um, and um, and it's really not something you just do once. Just because I found my passion and discovered my purpose, because it's a discovery. You don't choose it; it chooses you. That's what I
Right.
think. Um, but just because I found it doesn't mean I don't have to listen anymore. Because it's to listen and become aware of those cues from the universe that's saying, now, okay, now we brought you to this direction. Now we're going to go this way, and it's like, who am I serving? And how am I serving? And those answers come to me. It's not for me to figure out, it's for me to listen and, um, move into the direction of what that is. And while at the same time, the beauty of giving yourself that space is it's also that elusive self-care that people are always talking that it's a buzzword. They're always saying, oh, well, if a bubble bath is not a good self-care thing, if you don't enjoy it, it's not going to work, right? So it's self-care doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm so indulgent, I'm not going to get anything done. If you think about it in terms of giving yourself space, that's what self-care is all about. It's just about space, because within that space, that's where the answers will come, and that's where the peace comes, and that's where freedom is felt. It's all
Right.
in the space.
Yeah. I think so one of the terms that you've concepts that you introduced to me was following your feel good. And I've kind of as I'm want to do, I try these things on. And I've kind of developed a 2.0 follow your feel good.
Yeah.
I think that there's a in my estimation a short-term feel good and a long-term feel good. And I think for me, what I've been wrestling with or working through are those two concepts. So meaning that if you're in a space, it's kind of like what you're talking about, that 9-year journey, and it's in the short term, it's easier for you probably to go to that place that you already know. And you will say to yourself, yeah, that feels good because I know how to get in my car, and I know how to drive to that office, and I know how to interact with these business people that I'm interacting with, and that feels good. But there's this longer term feel good. There's this longer term calling, as I've been framing it, that's calling you to another way, that's calling you to a deeper way, that's calling you to a knowing. And quite honestly, in the moment, that could feel like you could be scared shitless. That doesn't feel, for a lot of people, that it might not feel good in the short term, but in the long term, you have this idea. And so I've been wrestling with that concept of trying to keep that in perspective, to keep me oriented towards, keep me, centered in a good place and present, but keep me oriented towards a good place down the road, because life isn't stagnant, because it keeps moving forward. The changes keep happening. And even after you acknowledge that thing, like, I'm going to give attention to, follow my feel, you got to, it is a commitment. It's a thing that you're doing ongoing.
Right. Yeah, we definitely need to keep our attention and focus on that. And it's really easy to get distracted. It's so
Yeah.
easy to get distracted. Um, you know, and um and part of that following your feel good is really giving yourself permission to be who you are and not be who you're not. And that's one of the most important things that we can learn when we're opening our awareness, is the awareness of who am I and who am I now. And our identity is certainly not tied to our roles, our responsibilities, our jobs, our paycheck, our titles. That has nothing to do with your identity. um, but um, like, what our desires change as we evolve, as we have different experience in life, right? So um, I never the word easy didn't really resonate with me until I
Yeah.
was somewhere about maybe 35 or 40 years old, because when you have so much hard, then easy climbs to the top of the value list. Like, of my top 5, values, easy's way up there. So it changed over time. And so to always be in tune with what's right for me right now, now, is
Yeah.
is important. And that means acknowledging, who am I now? And once you ask yourself that question, because that was something I hadn't done for a long time. I never said, well, who am I and what do I want? I lived life as a chameleon. Like, I'm sure you didn't do that, but that was
Yeah.
totally what I did for a really long time. Um, and that's easy to do. That's the only thing to do when you don't know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, you're not going to ask yourself, well, what do I want? I just didn't ask. I didn't know. And so that was difficult, because I felt this something, but I was like, well, who am I? you know, like, it was a
Yeah.
difficult time, for me. And I had to say, well, who am I? Right? Yeah, who are you, Linda? Right? So I had to go on a little journey, to discover that. Now, the journey wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be, because that was like, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go on this long, drawn out internal journey to find myself, blah, blah, blah. But that's exactly what it took, except it wasn't long, and it wasn't hard, and it wasn't drawn out. It was exciting and awakening and
Hmm.
evolutionary and empowering. It was like the coolest journey ever.
Love that. Yeah. And for me, it's the commitment is to appreciate, like, the kind of incremental. For me, it's incremental. So it's this just kind of commitment on a day-to-day basis of being good to myself, and then in return being good to others. And I've seen this kind of magnetism to other people in that frame of mind. I felt like an increasing magnetism to other really wonderful people that are living in that kind of light. But it's a daily thing for me. But it absolutely, makes life richer, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, it does. And you touched upon something, I'm going to call it magic. That magnetism, that when you show up differently, and I don't mean in action, I mean in your being, right? In this place of knowing, like, oh, abundance is mine, ease is mine. I am love, I am abundance, I am ease, I am freedom. When you know this and you show up in that energy, then beautiful things come at you. They come to you. They connect with you. I mean, and even in non-subtle ways, like on social media, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I hate social media. There's all this negative stuff. There's no negativity in my feed ever. I'm like, I don't see it. I don't know what's going on because I don't see it. And it's like, why is that not hitting my feed? Well, there's something about, that aura, if you will, that we give out when we're in this place of peace and self-love, and and knowing, and that you're, that, like, giving yourself permission to have that fire and spread the love, right? When you're in this place, this energy, it's really amazing how much good comes to you, and how many relationships can be repaired without the other person even doing anything, or even knowing that you're repairing it. Because when I show up different, the relationships feel amazing, so much different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gives other people permission. I had a deep conversation with a guy that I just met. He's doing some amazing things in the world, and we've only been friends for 2 or 3 months. And he keeps saying to me almost every time we talk, it's like, I barely know you. I don't even know why I'm sharing this with you. But when you show up in that way, you're giving other people permission to be human, to be fully human, not just the mask, but to be
Right.
their whole selves. And that's something that's so near and dear to my heart, because secretly, not secretly, I desire that in relationships as well. And so you're given that space of people, you get it back. It becomes this whole circle, that in a way that I found. And then, yeah, we have the ability then to repair relationships, and heal communities, and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, to me, that's the work. That's the work that's worth doing.
Yes.
And
Yeah, we're each soldiers in this awakening. We're each helping each of us as individuals in a greater awakening of, because you cannot be in love and in fear at the same moment. So when you are experiencing, when you are in this energy of love, and that's what you're spreading, it's contagious, and then that person can't be in fear, and then, so the more, we're kind of like all in this together. And
yeah,
as and when you have these deep, you make new friends all the time. I know of this about you. And you have these deep conversations. This is like you spreading this, like this sharing that you and I naturally do with other people. Then, there's another person who's, you've lightened their load for even just a few minutes,
yeah.
but then you've given them some things to think about. You've planted some seeds, and then they take that, and this is how this awakening is happening. It's really one person at a time. And whoever you and I might be reaching today in this conversation, hopefully we've awakened something within them as well.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a buddy. He works for one of the Fortune 500 companies, very very large company, and he was telling me he's been with that company, I think, like 20 years or something, like 15, 20 years. And he was telling me when he started with that company, the company was all about specialization. It was all about IQ and focus. You focus, you do this one job, that's all that you do. And he said, in literally in their doctrine in the company, he's seen them change. They're changing right now to a world in their company of exploring, of encouraging their employees to explore other ideas, explore themselves, explore talents, and explore gifts, because they believe the recognition and the encouragement of that part of yourself allows you to be a more productive, contributor to their company. And so really, at the end of the day, I think, somebody could say, okay, this is all just kind of like woo-woo stuff. But I think in a practical sense, a person that's more fulfilled in this way, even if you're selling insurance or whatever you're selling, is going to be a better insurance agent. they're going to be a better business person, a better architect, or better whatever. And I think the world is coming to an awakening of this. And we're slowly getting there, but we're coming to this enlightenment. I really believe that fundamentally in my spirit.
Yes, and using imagination, right, is a big part of this, allowing these creative solutions to happen as well by not just being so specialized and staying in one lane. Let's open the lanes, and as humans, we can say, how else can I use each of my talents, and how else can I use my knowledge, and how else can I use my wisdom, and my gifts, right? And so if we're just focused on only doing it one way, we're probably missing something, and we can be of greater service to the world or to our organization or to wherever you happen to be when you get out of just one lane and you kind of say, how else could I do this? One of my favorite coaching tools, which you're aware of, is, remember the illegal immoral tool? Do you remember that one?
Illegal, immoral. You have to remind me of that
Okay,
one.
so you said you're trying to solve a challenge, right? But you're thinking on one lane. This is how I solve problems, and I've got this challenge, right? So I'll take like a challenge a lot of people have, right? So like I want to, I need more money, right? That's my challenge, is more money, right? And in their business, they can't figure out a way, or in their life can't figure a way to get more money, right? To make more money, to whatever. Like they think they've exhausted all the things they could have tried, right? They've tried, and they're stuck. So I use this tool called the illegal immoral tool that I learned from Martha Beck, and I asked my clients to list 10 illegal and or immoral ways they could solve that problem. They could get money. So of course the first one is like, okay, well, prostitute. Okay, yep, yeah, that'll get you some money. I could steal it, I could borrow it, never pay it back, right? So but they have to come up with 10, right? And then when we're done with the list, because what that's done is it's taken you out of the lane, it's taken those barriers out. Now there's no barriers because you don't have to be legal and you don't have to be moral about it. Like, so how
Right,
else? So it
right.
allows you to have creative solutions. Then what you can do for each one of those 10 is you go back and you say, now what is the legal and moral counterpart to this idea, right? So for
Right.
prostitution, it's like selling myself, right? I'm going to sell my body, right? Well, how about sell my mind? Oh, I could create a course to teach something that I know really well, how to make a bird feeder and put that on YouTube or whatever, so it helps you find solutions that are outside of the way you might find a solution originally, because you've taken the boundaries off, right? So it sounds like that's what that corporation was doing that you were exemplifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a really fantastic tool for solving a problem, as well. So it's one of my favorites, and you got to get to 10. That's the key. Sometimes it's hard to get to 10, but that's where you get even more creative when you get to the end of the list. So it's a super fun tool for that.
Very
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I love that. I love
yeah.
that. Yeah, one of the ones that's been really impactful for me has been the Julia Cameron's morning pages from the Artist Way.
Hmm.
Uh, three pages, stream of consciousness, no edit. And that's allowed me to, because similar to you, as you're talking about, you're getting to that 7, 8, 9. What's that 10th one going to be? When you're writing in your morning pages, and you're writing, your first page comes out, second what page and a half, you're like, okay, by the third page, sometimes you're like, what else is there? And it's
Right.
amazing a lot of times what comes out of that third page. I often find there's something I had no idea was in my spirit, that's just like, oh, you're like, whoa. And it's either like connecting the dots on something, or showing me something that I didn't know that I cared about, that I do, and stuff like that. So that's I think one of the greatest concepts that I from your coaching has been this idea of a toolbox. And so, like, when I was younger in this journey, I struggle with this idea. I get all these concepts all the time, and like this concept, that concept, that concept. You're like, okay, let me try to do that. Let me try to do this. Let me do that. And the idea of having a toolbox, meaning like these all of these things are just tools in your toolbox. You can pull them out when you need them. You can set them back when you don't. And they're there in service of you, was a massive shift for me. Took all the pressure off of trying to get it all right and get it all together and be perfect, and allowed me to pull from it when I was in the time of needs. I love, love, love that concept.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, many people, you, me, all the people I work with, and a lot of people that you know as well, um, we are what I call conscious expanders. Like everybody's growing and learning and failing forward because that's how life is. But some of us are deliberate in doing that. We are more kind of people. That's the know more, be more, have more impact, you know, have more joy, have more life in our life, right? So building our toolbox is like lights us up, like give me more, man, because I'm smart and I want stuff. I want to figure it out. I want tools to be able to help myself. And that's one of the biggest differences between like a victim and a hero. A victim says other people are they're hoping and waiting. Things have to, someone has to change. Something has to change. Where a hero is like, oh, I want change. Okay, where do I go from here? I didn't see this coming. I'm in a place maybe I didn't want to be, but where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? What do I do from here? And so conscious expanders are like, what's in my toolbox? What can I use? And here's a new tool. So yes, we want to keep learning. Like, and like I'm the person who when the plumber's here and he's under the sink, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? How come that? What tool do you use? And it's not because I'm ever going to get under my own sink and fix my own plumbing, but I like to know stuff, and it
Yeah.
might come in handy in some way. It usually does. Yesterday we were fixing something like, oh, you need a machine screw. Like, how do I know that? Right? So it's just from learning and absorbing. It's part of that more that we have for conscious expander. So we are consciously expanding in a 360-degree way. We're expanding our knowledge. We're expanding our spirituality. We're expanding our, emotionally. We're expanding our intelligence. We're expanding our ability to channel and allow wisdom to come to us. We're expanding our network. We're expanding our connections. We're expanding in a 360-degree way. And so you are a conscious expander. I am a conscious expander. And all the people who are absorbing these conversations worth your while, who want to like learn more, know more, do more, be more, have more, conscious expanders. So that's a term that I came up with about 9 or 10 years ago. And it really just encompasses this whole toolbox. Like we all have toolboxes as conscious
Yeah.
expanders. Like, let me look and see what
That's
I got in here now. Look at all these goodies.
it's a beautiful term, beautiful concept, and I think the greatest part to me about it is that it's liberating, meaning that it gives you a lot of life. I found is just having a concept that says, hey, yeah, that concept applies to you, and to know that you are good and you're okay. Because living in the world and feeling like, oh, you're the only one that thinks this way or the only one that has these problems. That's what that concept, that conscious expand. I'd never heard of that before, but you definitely heard of people saying, oh, you should focus, you should do this, you should do that. Why pay attention to that? It's like, you mean there's a whole tribe of people that are like this? All right, I can walk in that light and walk in that truth and feel good, that that the universe, that God created people like me, and that's a good thing. And so that was incredibly liberating, that concept.
Yeah, and it gives us when we recognize, because it's like anything, knowing it's just part of who am I, right? Like, oh, that's who I am. No wonder I always do this. Now you can give yourself permission to not be who you're not, to not be one of those people. Like some people are beautiful with the focus, um, but my nectar is I'm much more like a butterfly. I got to go to all the flowers, man. I can't just stay on one flower. Please don't make me stay on one flower, because look at that flower and look at that flower. And what's beautiful about being that kind of person for me is then people like that who are like multi-passionate, I will call us. Okay, so here's the whole mouthful. I am a multi-passionate conscious expander. So multi-passionate people, what we want to be here and there and here and there, because that's where we can get more tools for our toolbox as well. So there's something really exciting about being on all those different flowers. And then we naturally have the gift of synthesization. So we can synthesize all those things, and then that becomes our tool that we can share. So as a coach, I like sometimes I don't even know where I got all the stuff. I didn't make it all up. I could tell you that. Like it's like a mashup. In music, like the mashup, you're hearing this and that at the same time. Who's really good at that is Pamplemousse. If you haven't heard them, mashing things up, and I mash something up, and then it makes something very synergistic as a tool, or a way to shed some light for a client. And so that synthesizing is one of the gifts of the multi-passionate conscious expander, because we have so many things. We're like, how can I use this tool and this tool together that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, but whoa, is that going to make an impact and help me help
Mhm.
someone else or help me help myself? So it's all beautiful. It's all
It
beautiful.
is. It
And
is.
we're all built differently. It's funny. Well, tonight I'm giving a presentation for a women's group about how to ditch fear, uncertainty, and doubt by recalibrating your mindset. And that's like, I'm going to actually attempt to coach a whole room of 60 women. So that's going to be, I've never coached 60 at the same time, but we're going to see how that works out. But next week, I'm giving a talk on time management. Now,
Mm.
I will tell you that multi-passionate conscious expanders do not manage time well. We really don't, because we don't like time blocking on the calendar. It's a beautiful suggestion. I've tried it at least 7 or 8 times, like in my life for different parts. Never ever works. So for multi-passionate conscious expanders, it's not about managing our time. It's about managing our energy and managing our capacity and giving ourselves permission to be who we are. Like, so I know I'm going to land on 6 flowers today. So why am I going to try to only land on one? That's confining and it's not going to work. Right.
Yeah.
So we have different strategies that we have to use, and time blocking is not going to work. And I have a feeling that all the people who go to my time management talk are going to be the kind of people like that time blocking is not working for. Because if it is, they're not coming to my talk. They're not still trying to fix this problem of time management. So I think this whole, giving yourself permission to be who you are, and this is why these one size fits all solutions don't work for everybody. Some people love to stay in their lane. That is their nectar. For
Right.
people like me, where we got a lane hop, flower hop, whatever, I know I'm mixing the metaphors again, but then our strategies are always around, evolve around discovering who you are and allowing yourself to be who you are and finding the systems that work for you. And if the system is flower hopping, then that's the system too. you know
Yeah. Yeah, I would throw in there for me, I found managing the expectations, that exist in your mind and what you think people have of you. There's a guy, he's the operations, the director of operations for a large co-working uh, space. And I was having a conversation with him. One of my friends told me that we have some devastating news. This guy is leaving. So I was like, well, I want to talk to him. So I went up and said, hey, I heard you're leaving. And he said, yeah, I found that I've been here for 2 years, and the two most important things in my life are faith and family. And I realized that I was out of whack with those things and that I needed to do something about that to get better in line. I don't want to, my kids are at these ages where they're doing all these things and I'm missing all of it. And so he changed the expectation, he changed the orientation. He's creating a space in his life for 3 or 4 or 5 months, however long it takes him before he goes into his next thing, to just be. And it was a moment for me, because as a multi-passionate conscious expander, there's a lot of energy going out, there's a lot of stuff going, but it's important I would say, be present to the energy, be present to capacity, be present to the expectation on yourself, that you're not saying to yourself too much, okay, I got to do all of these things. We have the ability to do a lot. That's out there in the world, but it's also important to take that time to calibrate. At least that was a story that I took from him, and to say, Neeki, it's okay to take a week or take 2 weeks and calibrate and release the expectation of all these things and having to juggle all those. So I'm actually really looking forward to that in June. I got a couple of weeks. I'm just gonna having the conversation with my buddy there was just like, yep, this is the right thing. The other thing that I've incorporated in my days, because the time blocking thing is interesting. What I have figured out to be more effective for me is day blocking. So if I create intention for a whole day as opposed to this hour here and that thing, I found that to be difficult. But
yeah.
so I've incorporated these things like what I call them is a dark day, and my dark days are for me to do whatever. And the concept comes from the theater world. When the lights are off for the show, it's called a dark day. Well, I had a beautiful experience. I was producing something in New York recently, and just a beautiful day, and it's like this dark day. I was like, oh, there's something to this. And so I've been sharing this idea with people. It's kind of a play on words, so it sticks in your mind a little bit more. But this dark day concept of literally not trying to schedule anything, just giving yourself the permission that whole day to do whatever it is you want to do. If you want to turn completely off, turn off your phone, turn off your computer, everything. If you want to go play golf, if you
Right.
want to go practice piano all day, if you want to paint, if you want to lay in bed all day, if you want to, whatever it is, given. So I found that to be effective,
Right.
really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's a feel to do day. What do I feel to do?
Yeah.
And then it's a question that you could ask yourself 6 times or 25 times in that day. What do I feel to do
Yeah.
right now? Yeah. And I love that you brought up basically the concept of life balance. And I know some people don't subscribe to that. They say it's impossible to balance your life. And other people say, oh, you've got to you've got to keep balancing your life. And life balance is an interesting concept because what happens is whenever we shift our focus to someplace for too long or we give it too much energy, we're always going to be in that place of shifting and longing. We shift over here and then we long for that over there, and then we shift over here and then we long for that over there. And so balancing your life isn't about putting it all on your plate at the same time. That's not balance. Balance is removing the unnecessary so that there is capacity for the things that are most important to you. And so it's really a reductive process. And most of the stuff that uses our capacity is crap going on up here, monkey mind. And if we can
Yeah.
get rid of that, we have more capacity available for those relationships and we do less. Like I had a client who was so out of capacity. And then she would beat herself up because she would miss things because she was taking on so much that she would forget like a normal human being, but the problem was she was taking on so much. And once we, discovered this, I gave her a homework and I said, this week, here's all I want you to do. You have your to-do list and then you have your to done list, right? The things you actually do, which may or may not have been on your to do list, right? So I want you to keep both of those lists. And then at the end of the week, I want you to look at all those lists and circle everything that you did to prove your significance. And when the next week we met, she said she circled 75% of the stuff she was doing was to prove her significance.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
why are we doing what we're doing? So maybe like, oh, I got so much work to do, but why are you doing each of those things? That's where we have to kind of get to that underlying reason, the why. Because for her, it was to prove her significance. So then we knew we could work on, how are you significant without having to prove it, worthiness, whatever, all the things that we do there. And then her load was completely lightened. Then she didn't have the guilt. She had time for her children. She had time for her husband. She had time. She was a writer for magazines, and she had a really good writing career. Like there were all, and then she was able to say no when she wanted to say no instead of yes when she really meant no. you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by life balance. It starts with reduction when you understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's how you can change your expectations, right? Because that is a thing to balance your expectations. But how about if you have less stuff to balance? Like
Yeah.
that's the point of that. So
Love that. That's a
yeah,
yeah. I think most people approach it. It seems like, or commonly we approach it with, okay, I'm gonna pull all these things together and let's figure out how to segment the hours in the day and dissect it. But that's a beautiful concept. The idea of reduction first. It reminds me of this book, Essentialism. It's like getting to the core of like what's
yeah.
really important.
I have that book. It's
Yeah.
very hard as a multi-passionate conscious expander. I love the concept. Love the concept. I have that book and I have The One Thing. Have you ever read that book?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love them. But how do I use them as a multi-passionate conscious expander is a little different. So
Yeah.
like I'll use, part of like what's essential to me is following my nectar. See, it's not the thing. It's what am I doing? So like why might I keep playing with different software? Because I like to play with the software. That's the playing, the figuring it out, the solving the puzzle. That's nectar for me. So that's why I just got to recognize, oh, this is what you're doing, Linda. Know what you're doing, what you're doing. You've just jumped onto the flower of puzzle solving, and you jumped off the flower of whatever you were working on your presentation. Just be aware. You know. But I love the concept and that what's essential really comes from within. it comes from our essential selves. So, and I really like, the questions of what's the most essential thing, essential, what's essential to me in my relationships, what's essential to me in my life's work, right? So I always keep my eyes on that prize, right? What's essential to me as a human? Like that's my top 5 value list, right? Freedom, ease, impact, right? My things, right? Connection, that's the essential. So my essentialism isn't so task oriented. It's more what fits me and my purpose. That's how I use the book, for myself. And same with the one thing. I love that question. I love the magic question in that book. What's one thing that I can do in this area that makes everything else either easier or unnecessary?
Yeah.
It's the best question, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're making things hard for ourselves. We're doing unnecessary things because we're actually procrastinating, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I love those books. They are very good books. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Woo, Nikai, you and I, we already know we could talk for like 3, 4 hours and just go on a bazillion subjects. But today, we were specifically talking about trying to help people to, um, stop the struggle. And I think what we really touched upon, just to kind of wrap it up, is recognize it doesn't have to be a struggle. If you make the space and time for yourself and listen, you'll find the way. And then the so you can get to it part is to, you finally give in. There's something big. You have gifts to give to the world. You know that there's a purpose here. And to give yourself the space to listen, because those nudges are there. Those universal nudges are already there. You already know the way. I have a giant list of questions that I ask my clients who want to find their wow. That's what I call it, find your wow. And so in space and by listening is where you find those answers. And
Yeah.
then your intelligent brain will put all those puzzle pieces together. So, yeah. So, but to stop denying, there is something special and unique about each of us, and we're each here to give our gifts to the world in some way, whatever that looks like. And so it doesn't have to be hard. We don't need to have the struggle. And by reducing and releasing what's unnecessary, that's how we can make the capacity to listen and find so that we can get to it.
Absolutely. One thing that's coming up to my mind right now, I think one of the things that I struggled with for some time was this idea that somebody out there would see my greatness, my bigness, and save me. This concept of just like being saved, and what I mean by that is they would recognize that and then come and then say, okay, Nika, we see you now. Here's the path for you to go down, or here, this is what you need to be doing. This is how to do it, and I sat with that for a long time and I struggled with that, and the reality of it is like, no, I'm here to save myself and to do the work and to do, because yeah, it is exciting, but it is, I think, like many journeys, those first steps can be kind of shaky, and so I just want to recognize, that in the light of kind of the potential that's there. I think ultimately take the step as an individual, do it, it's worthwhile, but know that first step might be a little shaky, and you can have your community to support you and people that you love to help you along the path. But yeah, you're going to have to be the one to take the step. The savior that in that way is not coming to to just going to pick you up and do it. And that kind of that mindset served me a lot to helping me, really go forward and then do the work. So
Yeah. Well, Nikai, I know firsthand you have come such a long way, and now you are a bright, shiny light in the world. um, and you are no, undoubtedly giving these gifts that you have to the world and making a difference in lives in ways 10 years ago you never even thought was possible.
yeah.
And so it's been my pleasure to watch you um, consciously expand and share that fire within you to help other people and light the way for others. That's what we're doing. We're lighting the way for others. So it's been so beautiful. And I really appreciate you being my guest today. And so I just want to thank you for sharing your time with me today and to share your time with our audience today. And I'm going to ask the audience to please subscribe. And if you want to reach out to me, I will put my information into the description. And Neeki, if you want me to put your information in the description, I will too, in case someone's interested in music production and creatives and shows and all this awesome stuff that you do. Um, and then I'm just going to say to everybody, until next time, make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.